Hi guys, I'm Jonathan. I am refuting artificial sweeteners threaten human health. The first claim, the claims go, weight gain can be attributed to artificial sweeteners. Second is artificial sweeteners contribute to deadly disease including diabetes and cancer. And the third one is artificial sweeteners can cause neurological problems. The first claim under the weight gain can be attributed to artificial sweeteners is that artificial sweeteners are measured as being hundreds of times sweeter than common table sugar. And the sweet taste itself triggers hunger cravings and food intake, leading to an overall increase in food consumption. But I did find that the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition concluded that overweight subjects who consumed fairly large amounts of sucrose, mostly as beverages, had increased in energy intake and body weight, fat mass, and blood pressure after 10 weeks. But these same effects were not observed by people that consumed artificial sweeteners. And then the other secondary claim on that first, on the weight gain can be attributed to it, is that foods and drinks sweetened with artificial, labeled as diet or low fat, tend to make people overconsume food and compensate for missing calories that they did not consume. But most investigators have found that aspartame consumption is associated with decreased or unchanged ratings of hunger, and that was also found in the same American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, but this was a different article. And then on the second claim, artificial sweeteners contribute to deadly disease, including diabetes and cancer. So the claim was that bacterial composition in human gut or gut microbiota is altered, which has been proved to lead to glucose intolerance in both humans and animals, and the individual is therefore placed at a higher risk of diabetes. But at the end of the article, of the same article that the advocate used, a researcher in Navid that is part of the a University of Glasgow, UK, Navid said that these findings wouldn't make me choose sugary drinks over diet drinks, just because he doesn't seem that the evidence is clear enough to be able to make a choice like that. And then another point on the contributing to diabetes or cancer is that artificial sweeteners such as saccharin have been controversial sweeteners due to its role in contributing development of bladder cancer. But Cancer Research UK.org said that saccharin is one of the best studied artificial sweeteners, and some studies in the 1980s found that it could cause bladder cancer in rats. And it was banned in Canada, and the American government warned that it could cause cancer. But we know that these effects were specific to rats and not relevant to humans. Bladder cancer risks are the same even in diabetics who consume more sweeteners more frequently. And the third major claim is that artificial sweeteners can cause neurological problems. Artificial sweeteners, the claim on that is that artificial sweeteners can promote the experience of chronic headaches and migraines. But a writer for New York Times, Anahad O'Connor, found that despite the widespread anecdotal reports, most studies found that there was no found association between artificial sweeteners and headaches. And then the chemically engineered sweeteners of the brain chemistry could induce seizures, but the U.S. National Library of Medicine, National Institute of Health said that none of the aspartame doses altered seizure indices. So basically, there's a counterclaim to almost every point that the advocate had made. Thank you. Did you need the second one?
No, I've got one's good. All right, well, all your argument is basically counterclaim. You've got evidence to suggest that the opposite is true or that there's no relationship. You had one piece of evidence that really is an attempt to diminish the advocate's own evidence, where you're citing the claim by the researcher at the end of their article that says that they wouldn't switch to sugar over diet drinks. And I thought that that's the one place where there's a specific criticism of the the advocate's evidence. No, it seemed to me like you should have a little bit more information on the problems with the rat studies on that point as well. Everything else, like I said, is counterclaim. So there's not any challenge to the grounds and the warrants that the advocate's presenting. It's all counterclaim. But you did do a good job, developing those counterclaims and presenting evidence to support those particular points. All right. Excuse me.